Hi guys, Ryan here. Today I want to answer a question that I get quite often, and that is if you do really need a power meter. Now there's a very simple answer to this, and then there's a more complex one, so let's just get away with the simple one first. In my opinion, you only need a power meter when you want to improve and become a better bike rider. And yeah, this is very simple. If you're just riding around for fun and to do some kilometers and to meet up with your friends or whatever, I get that. I don't do any of that because I want every pedal stroke to have a purpose. So I use a power meter because I'm very competitive in nature and I want to be the best as I can. If you're not like this and you're just happy to be on your bike, that's okay, and you really don't need any kind of power meter for that. You might say that, well, in the olden days, people were really fast using just heart rate and possibly a lot of drugs. And that's true, you can get very fast without the power meter if you're training hard, but generally this training isn't very effective and you need to do many hours a week to improve this way without seeing your actual power numbers. I think this is the reason why today, as you can see, perhaps is the smallest difference between a very fast amateur and a elite level pro. I think it's down to the fact that comes with the effectiveness of power training. Okay, so now for a more complex answer, and I want to break this down into 3 different disciplines that I ride. So the first one is cyclocross, then there's road racing, and then I'm going to show you later the time trial view on this. And this is basically the order of which the power meter gains importance. So for cyclocross, yeah, that's about explosive fitness and skill. You can't really base a cyclocross event or just perhaps a single lap based on power because it's going to be all over the place. However, you can see that on my cyclocross bike I do have a power meter. I have that for 2 reasons. The first one is I'm sort of a data geek, so it's just more of a information value because you just can't base on it. So I just really like to look into the data afterwards after a race or so, even though the power is not going to be that impressive because you just get short bursts. Then secondly, I also use this bike, or I'm planning to use this bike for some gravel or mixture riding in the summer with some different tires on, and for that power meter is going to be very useful because that's very similar to road riding. If I were to get a spare frame or a complete spare bike for my next cyclocross season, I think that would go without a power meter because yeah, it just adds weight and I can still have a power meter on my primary bike for data acquisition. So that's basically cyclocross covered. Power meter, really not necessary at all. Then, road racing. So in road racing, I would like to split that to racing itself and then preparing and training for these races. So when you get to a race, most of the time you ride in a big bunch, and in order to keep with that bunch and not knock yourself out of the winning contention, you have to keep up with the bunch no matter what. And that's another situation when you can't really pace by power meter. However, the data you get here is much more valuable than from a cyclocross race because it shows, it really draws your power curve nicely and you can see the areas on which you need to improve. So For the straight up racing situations, the data acquisition you get from a power meter after the race, that's really interesting and useful as well. Another point is where you actually make an attack, a move, or a breakaway. These are situations where you can really judge your effort based on the power numbers you are seeing and based on your previous experiences, but this only helps if you have some data and some previous experience to back it up. For example, one of the races, I was sitting in a bunch, then we arrived at the climb, quite a long one, more than 10 minutes, and people started going crazy. I was doing 7 watts per kilo to keep up, and then I decided, okay, I will let them go. There's no way in the world they can keep this up unless I'm in the Tour de France. So I did just that. I backed it up to 5.5 watts per kilo. And I was right. I saved a lot of energy by doing this because at the top of the climb, I just caught them up and I was fresher, definitely a lot more fresh than they were. So it can be very useful. And then as for the preparation, when you are preparing for a road race, again, based on the data you receive from your racing, you can tailor a training based on that, set up your zones, and in training you really have to have a power meter to be able to follow your zones and really track your improvement. So road racing, definitely a lot more important than cyclocross. Time trialing is a cycling discipline that probably relies the most on power meter pacing, as it is usually based on a very long and steady effort compared to road racing or cyclocross. And these kind of long efforts are extremely hard to pace based on feel, because the first part is going to feel very easy at the start, and then you just start to kick yourself because you went too hard at the beginning. And if you have your power meter and the numbers on your screen, then you probably know that in the first couple of minutes you really need to hold yourself back to not overcook it, but then the effort will get to you eventually, and then it becomes really hard, even though we are doing the same kind of power. So that's where the power meter really is necessary. And secondly, you need to have a high FTP to be any good at time trialing, and that's when the power-based training and all those hard intervals really make the difference, because if you don't use power for that, then even if you keep your heart rate at that level, you may be doing 50 watts less despite being exhausted, and that doesn't translate into the training effect you want. On more technical courses, it's not just about holding an average power. To get the best possible speed and time, you need to allocate more power to the more difficult sections of the course, and again, it's very difficult to judge without having some actual numbers to follow. Okay, so this is my take on the importance and use of power meters in cycling and training. If you'd like to know more about my experiences with power meters, different tips, and some upcoming videos where I'm going to describe which power meter is best for you based on your bike, then don't forget to tune into the channel and subscribe. It's all for today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.